Ladies and gentlemen, for those few of you that don't know who I am, I'm Greg Allison, president of HAL 5, the chapter with a program known as HALO for Altitude Liftoff. Yay. And the thing that we're real proud of and we're real happy about is that we had a very interesting mission that we did just on the 11th of May. And what we did, we have proven that an amateur group can now reach for space because we did it. It's within the grasp, it can be done. And the great news about that is, just look at the sudden paradigm shift in the order of magnitude quantum leap we made. This was an entity, a realm for the mega powerful nation, the superpowers. That's been the realm of space. It's an exclusive club, superpowers. Now the amateur groups are reaching. I mean, we need to go with all these intermediate steps. This is a major leap. It's a very exciting time to be involved in space development and doing it from this level. It's a lot of fun, and we got a great team, and I'm proud of them all. We'll talk a bit more about it. I worked up a very detailed speech here. Everybody knows how image conscious I am. So it's even I put blocks in here so it have an order. See, that real pretty speech? This is it. We launched the rocket on 11 May. Well, I think I'm loud enough.
But he's recording posterity.
Speak a little bit more. You look like you're going to be mobile.
We launched the rocket. Whoa, I'm sure about this. We launched the rocket on 11 May. The balloon took off, up, and away. At 60,000 feet, the balloon didn't pop. The whole thing started to drop. Immediately, we launched the rocket. Hooray! Thank you. That's it. Oh yeah, I do have some charts here, don't I? Yeah, okay. Let me get the list. Yeah, the devil's in the details. Okay, I'll talk a little bit. Yeah, this is us. Altitude liftoff. And I'll start this thing with objectives, and I'll talk some high-level stuff, these boring black and white charts, and I'm going to let Bill Brown have some fun with his color slides. But anyway, the objective of my program, the Altitude Liftoff program, is to greatly reduce the cost of getting student payloads into space and turnaround time. And we found a method to do it, and that's called the Rockoon. The interesting thing is that we've done this program up through SL1 on something in the order of about $15,000. Now, what we did for that money is we built a test stand. We fired over 50 static firings on that test stand of our hybrid rocket motors, which we were developing ourselves. We flew before our SL1 mission 9 altitude balloon flights to the edge of space, 20 miles up with amateur TV cameras transmitting live color video down to the ground. We had rocket motor igniter experiments on these balloon flights. We had script cut down event sequencers and global position satellite receivers, many things on these balloon flights. They were expensive flights, plus down to what happened. We did a ground-based rocket flight. We went to the schools and had field days in the schools. We've done a lot of stuff for this money. And we've been working on it for over 2 years. Well, I sat down and thought about all the people we have working in this program and how much time we put into it, which is quite a bit. And I said, well, what would it cost if this was charged at government rates? Standard, industry practice. About $3 million. And that is for the time actually spent on it. Of course, if this were a government program, in a traditional sense, the way things used to be, we would have had a big report and requirements, meetings we had to went through, procedural items to deliver. You can figure we would have probably expended $12 million. To do an experiment like this. And if you look and see, in fact, experiments that have been done in the past that launched rockets like this in the government years past, you'll find examples like that. They were fairly expensive. So we think we got a lot, but mostly out of our guys because they were great volunteers. What else is on there worth saying? Basically, I'm not going to read these charts. If you want to see what to say, you better read them. But one of the neat things is one of the spin-offs is we get experience as a team. We get hands-on experience. We get to learn the lessons of rocketry, of balloon flying, of operating in space. It's not just theory. We get to practice it, see what it is. Well, what is a Rockoon? That's where you combine a rocket and a balloon. It's been done before. James Van Allen did about 100 missions back in the 1950s in conjunction with the Navy. The 12 Navy ships, they used military rocket motors. They were derived initially from the jet takeoff assist motors. And so that was a big quasi-government program then and there. But they got it to 82 miles in some of their experiments. And they did some interesting things back then, but that was the 50s, and some group of guys from Huntsville come up with an idea that they could fly their Explorer 1 satellite on one of those Redstone rockets, and Rocket kind of went away until some good guys from Huntsville decided it was kind of interesting, and we pulled it out again. So what's so neat about a Rockoon? You get up in a balloon to about 100,000 feet. You're over 99% of the atmosphere at 100,000 feet, which means you only have 1% drag, which means that the plume of your rocket motor is going to expand, not to 14.7, but to 0.147, which means you can build a bigger expansion nozzle. More area against which the thrust is going to provide work, which is more thrust for the same amount of fuel, which specific impulse is pound thrust per pound fuel consumed. That's miles per gallon in rocketry, and guess what? It goes way up. So you got a more efficient rocket with a whole lot less drag, so you get dramatically increased performance of your rocket. I looked at these charts since I pitched them last year. Anyway, we chose a hybrid rocket. We chose a hybrid rocket because they're safe. They don't explode and fail catastrophically like the liquids. They perform better in general than most solids, and they're a lot easier to build, manufacture, and use than most liquid motors, a lot less complex. So we get a lot of good performance that is within the range of ease of manufacturing and safety. So it's something an amateur group can get at real easy and get great performance out of. It's also something that companies and other agencies can do too. But what we discovered when we got into this stuff is, hey, gee whiz, with advances in rocketry and amateur TV and electronics and amateur rocketry today, newer balloons and materials, we discovered that the Rockoons that they were doing with the Navy was something an amateur group could do now. That is within the grasp of an organization like Cal 5. And indeed it was. We did it. And to do that, we come up with the HALO program. Now, again, the HALO program is an educational program. It's a two-phase program. We've got the rocket development, Rockoon development, and we've got an educational program which is based on the junior achievement program in the school systems, where we go into the grades with the instructional materials. And our book on that is here in the conference. Cameron Joseph is actually looking at it right now over in the education chapter meeting. But also there's education for the adults. And we're learning a lot in the hands-on aspects of training of this. In the phases of the program, for instance, we started out in phase 0. We were doing all our rocket motor test stand activities, balloon flights, a lot of development, a lot of testing. We had, in addition to that, we had built vacuum chambers in which we evacuated our test specimens. What we find is that rocket motors don't want to ignite at 100,000 feet. Fuel don't want to burn. It's not just because you don't have oxidizers, you don't have the pressure that's required to make these things work. And that goes to your vent sequencers, the whole 9 yards. So most rockets, motors, parachute, ignition devices, all this stuff don't work until you really engineer it a lot. And we spent a couple of years doing that. Phase 1 is what we just completed. This is SO1. This is our proof of concept flight. And next we move into operation. This is where we're talking flights. So now this is a chart I pitched last year. And really where we were hoping, we thought we would hit space with this rocket. The balloon had performed for us as expected. We would have. But really that's primary objective of phase 2. The primary thing we wanted out of phase 1 we got. We discovered that we could indeed make our system work and launch the rocket at high altitude. This talks a bit more about our classroom program. The educational program is envisioned to evolve into a pyramid structure. At the bottom level, the junior grades, you have the junior achievement type classroom material. You do some experiments like the high altitude balloon flights for kids to fly in middle school, high-powered rockets. And the high school students can actually fly missions into space. Imagine that, high school students. and did it within the school year, a 9-month turnaround. You know, it's unheard of. You can't do that on shovel day. Anyone managed to do that? I know a guy that started out in middle school with an experiment, and he had graduated from his master's work and was working as a NASA scientist before the thing flew. And guess what? The astronauts forgot to turn it on. They reflew it though, and it did work. But that was one of the earlier giveaway specials. Our classroom thing's got several sessions. At 9 sessions, the kids are given permission to send rascals to Rocket and Raccoon to Mars. And we're going to divide them into teams, and it's pretty well supported. I'm going to kind of skip that stuff. I'm going to skip through. I want Bill Brown to get up here in a minute and start talking. So I talked last year in New York. Next time I'll let some other guys have a talk. But just real quick, there's a picture of the fuel grain of a, well, I can't read right, it's too small. There we go. Fuel grain of a hybrid motor. Here's your nozzle. These are O-rings. It's a graphite nozzle. That's a ground flight configuration. We put a nozzle extension out here for the space shot. Fuel's asphalt. Our oxidizer's nitrous oxide. I mean, for Pete's sakes, we're going to pave the road space and laugh all the way. All right, Bill, are you ready?
Yep.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Brown is our lead balloonist. He's had a long history of balloon flight development and experiments. He started several groups of amateur balloon and amateur TV all around the United States. And we're fortunate to have him in Huntsville as we've got this program kicked off. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Brown.
And Ronnie, could you focus the slide for me, please?
It's fine.
Oh, it is? Okay.
That's because we can't see everybody. So.
Oh, okay, it's out of focus here, but it looks fine there. This is, as Greg described, we have a Halo Achievement Program for elementary and middle schools. And this is our balloon we fly. What we do is to carry a simulated satellite above the schoolyard, about 200 feet above the classroom. And we've designed it to look like a little NASA satellite. It's got a TV camera with a built-in TV transmitter, as well as a film camera that takes a picture every minute. And they do various experiments, from trying to do a gridded area where they plant different things and see what it looks like to simulate a satellite view of the Earth. And also they have fun spelling out formations on the ground. We also drop gliders. We have them all make up a glider that looks like the space shuttle, put them in a little box, and then have one of the kids release a trapdoor. And we get a prize for the farthest flying glider. This is a picture of the actual payload. And here's a bird's eye view that was actually taken from the onboard film camera and in sequence. And inside you'll see all the paper gliders ready to be released. This is the view from 200 feet above the schoolyard, and this is Mountain Gap Elementary School, and they had fun spelling out MG. Also, the kids in the classroom, those that could not come out for the exercise, we had a TV set in the classroom and they could watch the live goings-on transmitted down live on video. We've done a number of weather balloon launches in preparation for our Raccoon flight. This is to test out all the electronics and basically getting all our systems ready to go, test them out in actual conditions. The conditions in the stratosphere, it could be 100 degrees on the ground, but it'll be about 50, 60 below zero as you go through the jet stream area. It actually tends to heat up a little bit to a toasty 40 below zero when you get to 100,000 feet. So we flew a series of missions. Our first one was actually from International Space Camp at the Huntsville, Alabama Space and Rocket Center. And that was a great one. We had 300 of the kids attending space camp actually participate in the launch. And I have a videotape of that I'll show in a little bit.
Bill,
Yes?
you mentioned how expensive those two types of balloons are, the red one and the small one.
Okay, the red balloon is approximately a little over $200 and it's reusable. It takes about a $50 tank of helium for each event we do. So for very little investment, we can go and present space to the classroom and get the kids really fired up about it. And they do get inspired by it, they really do. In fact, we have one of the kids that participated in that in our audience, Katie Johnson in the back. Katie, did you have a fun time with that?
Uh-huh.
Did you learn a lot about space?
Yes.
How'd your glider do?
It was good. It wasn't the best one though.
Okay, we'll try again better next time. But do you want to be an astronaut?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have an astronaut standing behind you.
Well, he's the person to talk to. Okay. Why take a rocket up on a balloon? As Greg described, there are many advantages to that. Our first test flight went up to 30,000 feet. That same rocket, launched from a balloon, was predicted to go over 60 miles up, between 50 and 60 nautical miles above the Earth. And that is because it's above 99% of the Earth's atmosphere. Gives you, essentially, the balloon becomes the first stage. We see a few curves here showing there are two definitions of the actual definition of space, 50 nautical miles and 100 kilometers, which is the international space border. We were hoping to exceed both of those with our experiment. This is a diagram of the rocket system. We had two fire extinguisher tanks to give us enough volume for the nitrous oxide, an igniter, and a solid fuel chamber made out of common asphalt. It's a hybrid rocket, very safe to transport. Actually, we were driving on rocket fuel on the way to the launch site. Basically, what we do is to ignite by remote VHF radio uplink. This is decoded by a touch tone. We actually fired it with a touch tone pad. It decoded it on the uplink, fired an electric match, which ignited a little piece of solid fuel, which plugged the nitrous. That allowed the nitrous to dump into the combustion chamber and started ignition. All done from 120 miles away while the balloon and rocket were up 60,000 feet above the Earth. This is our gondola. This is to support the rocket and also to keep it warm during the flight through the 60 below zero temperature. And gives it some stability as it shoots out of the gondola. Our total package weight was about 90 pounds. The gondola contained all the uplink and control electronics, the remote command electronics, and inside the rocket we had a TV camera looking out at the horizon from the nose cone, and a GPS receiver sending down on a UHF transmitter telemetry. On the side of the gondola, we actually had a TV camera attached to the side of the framework looking up to view the rocket launch, and I do have video of that. This is our launch sequence. We were near the coast of North Carolina to allow us to float out immediately out over the ocean. The big advantage of this is we didn't want to hit anybody in case the parachute failed. And we launched 2 miles from the coast. We were hoping to get to 105,000 feet, at which point we would launch the rocket. It would cruise to over 50 nautical miles had we reached that altitude and parachute down to a water recovery. This is the full length of the rocket, 7 foot 4 inches long. Total weight about 44 pounds fuel. It's 22 pounds empty. To come up with this, we did a lot of motor tests, and this was done at one of our members' farm. His dad's farm built a rocket test stand. And we came up with quite a few flight tests. The neighbors really enjoyed this. There goes these rocket guys again. They were quite spectacular, and we have videos of that at some point.
Still don't know what happened to the person in the chair.
This is our chapter president, Greg Allison, holding our first Halo test rocket. This was the launch from Manchester, Tennessee. This is Al Wright, and he is preparing to fuel the rocket with nitrous oxide. And this is our first launch. It was perhaps the most impressive amateur rocket I've ever seen, and I've seen some pretty big ones. It went up about, we estimate, 30,000 feet. Fortunately, we were in a very large field, and we came up with a high-tech post hole digger. It's very efficient, but finding the accurate point is a little tough. We tested out the fuel tanks. One of our concerns was what would happen temperature-wise during the flight to the nitrous oxide. We wanted to keep it at least to 70 degrees to keep the pressure inside of it at about 700 to 750 psi. So we did a flight test with this one of the fuel tanks on a very large plastic balloon. This is we had a TV camera and telemetry in the styrofoam package to the left and the fuel tank hanging below. We launched this from Huntsville. It traveled towards the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, and landed in a field of kudzu, which is this terrible weed that takes over everything. There was a woman washing her dishes in the kitchen looking out of her window, and she saw this huge thing, this big pink package and this big silver balloon land in her backyard. She immediately called all the TV and radio stations claiming that a UFO had landed. Just at that point, my friends who were chasing the balloon by direction finding on the radio signals knocked on her door.
Isn't that Jeff Foxworthy? You might be a redneck if you've been interviewed at least twice for seeing UFOs.
That is exactly right. It took them a long while to convince her that they weren't really aliens out to get her. This is one of the chase members. We had an onboard film camera taking pictures during the flight. There's the camera, the pressure tank in the kudzu. And this is our new generation of the rocket. This is what we flew on the balloon. This is Steve Mistakis, and he's holding one of the fuel tanks and the tail fin assembly. We're installing the igniter system right in this picture and screwing the tanks together. The parachute was actually put in the middle of the rocket, which just made sense because it was the best place to put it, in the neck where the two tanks join together. This is Tim Pickens, and he is our resident rocket scientist.
Bill, did you mention what type of tanks those were?
Yes.
Those are fire extinguisher tanks, which is an odd use for fire extinguisher tanks to actually create flame instead of put them out.
If I may, I'd like to point out we did actually have two parachutes. We had the main chute was right here, and we had a drogue chute down here. The drogue chute was deployed at 200,000 feet. The main chute was deployed about 20,000 feet. The drogue chute was to actually do most of the work. It was a military drogue chute, and the analysis of loads and where to deploy and all that was done by running the Joey standing in the back. And the guy that built the launcher, both for the balloon and the rocket, is standing here with a Halo t-shirt on video and this stuff. So I'd point out a few of these guys and give them some credit because they did a lot of really good work.
And my official title was Balloonatic. This is Clay Sawyer and Tim packaging the rocket up for shipment to North Carolina. And there's the group getting ready to roll. We put it on a framework to survive the truck. Was it in the back of the truck?
Yes.
Yeah, on the back of Tim's truck.
Funny thing to see going down the road.
Not many
It's one
people.
of these rider trucks around.
We're taking U-Haul now. We had a lot of support equipment. We had several tents, generators, lighting systems, and all kinds of stuff to carry. And 10 carloads of people to go 700 miles to the launch site. And we did this 3 times. This is the internal telemetry and TV system inside the nose cone of the rocket. This is quite a wiring effort and took quite some time. And it took quite a bit of effort when you consider it's going to end up in the ocean. Here's the complete view of the nose cone. And this is the TV telemetry package that hung on the outside of the gondola pointing up to view the rocket launch itself. This is our command control receiver. We had several channels that we could command on and off, and included a safety cut-down mechanism in case the rocket did not fire. We were able to command it and bring everything down so it wouldn't float overnight. This is the famous Wernher von Braun shot simulation. This
That
is
was the end of rocking, and this one's return of rocking.
This is Ed Niska. He is manning the ground station. We actually wrapped it up in a cocoon, or a raccoon in a cocoon, and that was designed to keep everything warm. We're loading the rocket into the gondola at this stage, just several hours before we lift off. This is our ground station. We had 2 TV receptions, one from the nose cone of the rocket and one from the gondola looking out, as well as our command control receiver and transmitter and our telemetry reception. It's a big balloon. It's 70 feet long of plastic, and 30 feet of it is inflated on the ground. As it goes up, it will inflate to a perfect sphere, or near sphere. This will lift a small person off the ground. It's 144 pounds of lift at the neck of that balloon. And we figured if anybody got caught in the rope, we'd hand them the camcorder and say, "Get some good footage." Have a good trip. That long tube on the left is how we filled the helium, and it took 12 tanks of helium. And I just wanted to say we had a couple of close calls on this flight of not being able to succeed, just getting the balloon off the ground. Fortunately, the weather was absolutely perfect, no wind, but a half hour before our FAA deadline. And I might mention, it takes quite a bit of effort to get the FAA to approve a rocket launch. Greg was on the phone and fax machine and many letters and proposals later for many, many weeks to get the approval. But once they give you a window, they actually route traffic around the projected launch area. That's a hard limit. And he was able to convince them to give 1 half-hour extension because we were running late and inflating the balloon. But at 7:05, they said, "You cannot launch after that point. No way, you'll have to tear it down and try again tomorrow." Of course, we just had the one balloon and 12 tanks of helium. 2 of the tanks were nearly empty. They were supposed to be filled, but they weren't. So he got on the cell phone, got a hold of the Food Lion store, and convinced them to give them 2 of their tanks that they use for party balloons. So with minutes to spare, they came rolling in with a pickup truck with these 2 big bright red helium tanks, and it was just enough.
With the clown face of the...
And we were able to get it off the ground. We launched it 5 minutes before the FAA deadline.
So Food Lion was a sponsor of this.
Now we wrote them a check.
Actually, when I first called them, the answer was no. And for 3 times, the answer was no. On the 3rd no, we sent the guys down with the truck just in case we got them to say yes. Fortunately, the guys were down there when they said yes. If they had not been there with the cell phone and pickup truck, we wouldn't have got that stuff back in time. It was that close, by the skin of our teeth.
5 minutes to spare. We're getting ready to launch. In the background, you see the fellows holding the rocket gondola. There's at least 70 foot of just loose plastic, which is part of the balloon, and about 20 or 30 feet of line between the balloon and the rocket launcher. This is what's known as a Chomi launcher, that blue system. That's how Norm Chomi at the University of Wyoming developed that system to hold down the balloon and allow a quick release. And it worked flawlessly. And Larry Scarborough on the back was able to build this for us. The plans This is just moments before liftoff.
This is actually a serial rocket balloon.
Oh, it's the same thing.
Yes, sir.
On the left is Ben Frank. He started the Raccoon, one of the Raccoon efforts a few years ago, and they were unsuccessful in lifting the rocket off, but they paved the way for us a great deal with the FAA and finding launch sites, and he was a great help to us. Okay, this is the actual launch. And there it goes. It actually looks like a tornado when it took off. You see the thing flying through the air on the right. That is the little styrofoam, felt-covered styrofoam piece that cradled the balloon in the launcher. And it's actually flying in midair. And liftoff. Just getting to this point was an amazing feat, making everything come together with the time limit we had. But we still had the rocket launch to go. From head to toe, it's about 150 feet long. And off it goes out over the ocean. The flight was a success in that we got up to 60,000 feet. And as we had an arm switch on it that would disarm the rocket until we were over 50,000 feet. And that was to keep it away from any populated area. We wanted to be at least 20 miles, because that was the projected range that the rocket could travel horizontally. So we kept a safety in it, the little pressure switches that would keep the rocket signal from getting to the igniter. Over 50,000 feet, I told everybody, guys, we can launch now anytime, but let's try for 105,000 feet. I happened to be looking at the TV set that was showing the gondola view of the balloon above. And the balloon had been wrapping around on itself, twisting as it went through the jet stream. And it closed the area of the balloon such that it blew up all of a sudden at 60,000 feet. I just happened to be looking at it, and it just ripped right down the middle. And there's about a second of shock. And I knew we had just a minute to fire that rocket before the rocket would disarm. So I yelled, "Fire! Fire!" And Ed grabbed his microphone and anxiously started keying in touch tones. He had a 5-digit touch tone sequence to fire the thing. You can imagine. And he had to read it from a card, doing that real quick. But he did it flawlessly. But the first time did not fire. The second time he tried it, nothing. We had now maybe 10 or 20 seconds before the rocket would disarm. He tried it one more time. All of a sudden, the rocket takes off. It was that close. And it was a beautiful takeoff. It just ripped the plastic right off the gondola, and you can see on the videotape, you'll see the little orange glow as the rocket nozzle headed off into the edge of space. We estimate the altitude based on our launch altitude to be approximately 30 nautical miles. So we did not achieve the definition of space, but we were successful in launching a rocket, and certainly hope in our future flights to achieve that. Now, where can we go from here? Well, we have several destinations in mind. This is one possibility. Or maybe. Although I would rather go there by rocket than some of their methods people have tried in the past. With that, let me turn it back over to Greg. We'll take any questions at this point. Yes?
What was your approximate ascent velocity?
We were going on the balloon 600 feet per minute. It's a fairly slow ascent.
What was the peak velocity of the rocket achieve?
Ronnie could probably answer that one best.
Had we launched at 100,000 feet, burnout velocity would have been about Mach 5. From that lower altitude in the denser atmosphere, we probably achieved about Mach 3 at the peak. Did you explain the loss of telemetry yet?
We think the transmitter burned out. It was very weak, but we couldn't copy the telemetry.
G-forces or?
No, that was before we launched the rocket.
Well, also the antenna on the GPS was above the metallic shielding, basically, of the electronics tank.
Putting an antenna in a nose cone is very difficult.
So if anything, it's probably transmitted straight up. We did see some noise which indicated it was transmitted throughout the mission. So I don't think it actually burned out. but it was just in case we've tested this thing and flew from Huntsville out over the Coe balloon, and we got good reception then. It's just a problem with the antennas. And also, we saw that between the rocket video, which wasn't particularly aesthetically appealing, except for maybe 1 or 2 frames after it launched. And the balloon video, the rocket transmitter was twice as powerful, but the balloon transmitter, half the power, did a much better image because the antenna was pointing down. It's a good arrangement. And you're not supposed to have these antennas near metal. Almost our entire rocket body was conductive, to include the fins, which were carbon composite, where we directly mounted the camera video from the rocket, and the motor casing. Now, one thing we did, even though our fuel was asphalt, motor casing was a high-tech carbon fiber wound motor casing.
So putting a radio antenna on the rocket is a challenge. And the reason we didn't put the rocket TV antenna in the nose cone, which would have been the best place for it, was that it was interfering with the GPS receiver because they were so close together, and we wanted to get good GPS data. So a combination of the antenna pattern and the transmitter made it, or 120 miles out, it made it difficult to receive any telemetry. Yes?
So you were using what?
This is amateur radio television, exactly. And the same for the UHF and VHF telemetry. It's all amateur radio. There are several amateur radio operators in our group, myself included.
Before taking more questions, I don't want to make an announcement. Before you take questions, people begin to leave. But I'd like to make an announcement before people leave. We got 2 more missions in direct cleaning. We've got more things we're going to do, and then we're looking at what to do after that even right now. We want to keep going higher, farther, and better. Apply the lessons learned from things like this. The way you learn things is do them. Do them on a small scale where they don't cost so much, so the mistakes don't hurt you as bad. You can recover easy, and then move on. That's our philosophy. That's the prototyping concept, and that's what we're doing. That's why our first mission was a proof of concept mission. And so we've got a lot bigger rocket we're going to do this fall from a NASA barge out in the Gulf of Mexico. Now that's going to be pretty interesting. We definitely hope that we achieve space on that flight and recover payload. We plan to fly some student payload, and we'll definitely have some non-conductive area for the antennas and so forth. Another thing I want to point out, the reason I grabbed the microphone, which Ronnie's right there frantically signaling to me, is that, and where I'm leading with this, is that we do need and look for support for our program. It costs a lot of money. Frankly, we when you're a chapter, so how many people in here are members of chapters? Okay, nearly everybody. Hey, this is a very chapter-supported program, leader. When you're spending $15,000 as a chapter, you pretty well appreciate that that's a lot of money. And it's broke all of us. So we're looking for all the help we can get. Frankly, we really need it. One of the things that we're doing is Ronnie's back there selling T-shirts, like the one Larry and Ronnie both have on for our project, and it would really help us out. And it's not a bad T-shirt. You can chase your dog in it and go jogging, or that's what I do, or even wear it proudly, as I remember.
You may not win the Miss Florida pageant with one, but they're pretty simple.
John?
You guys, what you should do is like have one member make a good video of your project and then sell the videos at a slight profit to support the program. I think a lot of people will buy videos just like they bought DCX videos.
That would help. There is a lot of things that we require and need, though, in terms of money. One thing, now let me describe a little bit about this flight that we're going to do this fall real quick, and then I'll be done with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, Greg's up here trying to blow his own horn and sell $8 t-shirts. How much is a t-shirt? $12 t-shirts. Y'all are NSS chapter members, right? We're NSS members. I'm an NSS member. I live 150 miles away, but I joined the HAL 5 chapter. You can join their chapter, get their bi-monthly newsletter, find out what's going on in their program and keep track of it. And if you're anywhere near them, you can come to any one of these missions. They're always looking for help.
They were wide open.
So if you bought a t-shirt in the last 2 days, Join another chapter, be a long-distance member, support the activity, and get the information direct.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate that. But we have some websites, and that's part of what is in these charts that you can look at too. Thank you, Chuck. Chuck, as you may know, is the Southeastern Regional Director of the National Space Society, and a good one, I might add. Thank you for the good, strong plug. This is a description of the SL2 rocket, basically, that will be flying from the NASA barge. Now, we've actually decided to up the thrust, and since this chart was made, and cut down the firing duration. So we're looking at firing probably 600 or 700 pound thrust rocket, and probably back down to a similar firing duration. It's the same impulse, just divide and multiply and divide, and you get all the numbers. It's going to be the same. It's got about 10,000 pound seconds of total impulse. So you can divide time over thrust, but we're looking at about 600 to 700 pound thrust for this mission. And it's going to be made with, this one will have aluminum tubing and carbon fiber wound motor again. And we're going to do another one after this guy. And this one's going to be SL3. And here we're talking 1,000 pounds of thrust for 40 seconds. But again, we're thinking about cutting the time and bringing up the thrust levels. These are rockets that are going to be going higher and higher. Primary thing SL2 buys us is that, let me leave that on, I'll talk the websites here. The SL2 rocket provides us the capability to fly a payload and some experiments that will help us start developing active guidance so we can do true microgravity. This is intended to be an operational mission, and we want to get serious about getting stuff up for the students. Here's how you can get at us. Actually, I got a ton of material, but we haven't put it in here yet. That I can show it with a book that Carolyn Joseph's got right now. And I'm ghallison@aol.com, but I get hit by about 40 emails a day, and so I answer some every now and then. So please don't feel offended if it takes me a while to get around to it. And unfortunately, they scroll off if you don't grab them fast. But anyway, I've had some interest expressed here today in this SL2 mission. The SL2 mission and SL3, NASA's going to support us in those programs and provide a barge from which we're going to launch. They're also providing some of the money for some of the materials that we're going to be using to build the rocket. They're going to provide helium, and they're going to provide the balloon for the SL3 mission. We're going to do the balloon for the SL2. So they're helping out a little bit. Originally, I pitched at the board of directors last year for NSS support, and they tied it for SL2, which is our second mission. They tied that into insurance requirements that were, for $7,200 in NSS, I was going to have to secure $32,000 in insurance, but that's what I was going to have to pay to get the insurance. So that just never quite added up. I think we were to some point now that we can work around some of those issues, but we really could use support, and there's been some interest expressed, and I'm kind of curious to see how much support I can get for it here. And having amateurs and volunteers pay for all of the SL2 and just reprogramming the NASA money for SL3 so that there'll be less people to say, well, was that an amateur space shuttle? By strict definition, amateurs, when you do it without wage, you do it for the love of doing it. So I said they're all amateur, but for those that want to argue and quibble the point, how many people would be willing to pitch in a contribution, and what kind of support is there for that? How many people would be willing to pitch in contributions to SL2 to limit NASA's role in it, so that we can claim that all the material money came from volunteers? Well, that's about a 50%. That looks pretty good. I'm really pleased to see that. And I may bring this, well, Ryan's back there with T-shirts. You can give an extra donation with the...
Say anything about T-shirts, just start passing the plate.
Yeah.
Everybody got a hat? We got an usher. Bill, you want to be an usher? There's a hand over here.
I got a big talking to the window too.
Yes, the mills go.
Yes.
How much do we have to contribute to your static firings or ground testing of the SL2?
Oh, we'll leave it up to your option. But we'll try to let you know when we do these things. It's easier when you join us and watch our webpage, and because the schedules can joggle a little bit, but we will be doing some more static firings, and they should be kind of interesting with this motor. Be a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun. You probably saw them. You just showed the slide. We didn't show the video. Okay, let's do the video. Guys, let's do the video before we do any more questions. We'll lose anybody.
This first video is our very first balloon experiment that we did at the Space and Rocket Center with Space Camp. And then I'll follow that with the actual raccoon footage.
Okay.
The broadcast, this is from a local TV station, Channel 19 in Huntsville. And the correspondent was actually a member of our
Space
group.
Camp, what's the mission and how are would-be astronauts getting there?
Can everybody hear that okay?
Conscious ideas that would make NASA jealous here on Easter 1910.
Why would the folks in the
World Space Camp students managed to go out of this world without a
We didn't power it by Jack Daniels. We thought about it.
the International Space Camp at the Space and Rocket Center.
And to help kick off their exciting week of science, News Center 19's Dick Curtis says they help send a package to the edge of space.
It's only appropriate to reach for the stars at a place like the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. But what if you don't have a rocket handy? Well, Huntsville engineer Bill Brown says, use a balloon.
If you were to ride along with this balloon, you could see from Florida to Ohio.
Bill's been sending up balloons for years, but not just any balloons. If all goes as planned, this balloon will zoom up well over 100,000 feet above the valley and send back full-color video. The Space and Rocket Center, along with the local chapter of the National Space Society, backed the launch, which may become a regular part of Space Camp.
That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for a balloon.
The camera was working great, sending back video on a ham radio transmitter. And this would be no quick trip. It would take about 2 hours to get up to 120,000 feet, high enough to see the curvature of the Earth and the blackness of space. The balloon did everything Bill hoped it would. At 120,000 feet, it burst, and a parachute brought the camera and transmitter back to Earth. Hams on the ground tracked its descent and knew it landed north of Huntsville. As it turned out, the pictures coming from the balloon told where. Folks at the Lincoln County Courthouse looked at the video and knew.
Right there. That's the McGee's chicken houses.
Ham radio operators searched near his farm for about an hour. There it was, out in the middle of a cow pasture.
This world didn't have no friends.
That you said. From near space to the back 40, all in one day. Connected to Dick Curtis at Large, News Center 19, Lincoln County.
The tax assessor's office knows all. Just remember that if you ever fly a balloon and want to find it. All right, next up is the raccoon experiment we did just a couple of weeks ago from Hampstead, North Carolina, which is just near Wilmington. The very first footage, though, I want to show you is the balloon footage from our test flight that landed in the kudzu. This is the UFO balloon. And you can see the beautiful video downlink we can get from this experiment. This was a very low power amateur television transmitter. It's below channel 14. People 400 miles away can watch this without any special equipment.
Whoa. Which channel?
It's cable-ready channel 58 and 59.
It's an audio.
But you had to have an outside antenna.
North Carolina. Just up
It was 1 watt.
Hampstead.
This is our launch site.
Recently bush hogging, there's a lot of stubble on the field. We're afraid it's going to possibly puncture our...
That's a big mowing job.
Beating down the stubble with a lawnmower, and probably going to have to put something...
Good thing we didn't have a push mower though.
So we can stretch out our balloon.
Mechanical kind. Yeah. We're in the process of filling the balloon here, the rocket.
The rocket is nestled in the gondola. The nitrous oxidizer is being loaded and heated. The balloon is stretched out on the ground, except for the end that's receiving the receiving the helium already. Bill Brown has the team going with a manifold so they can pump in more than one tank at a time. The sun is about 45 minutes away from rising. And the news media over here.
17 pounds thereabouts, minus.
Yep, 17.
That's liftoff. It's actually a very smooth liftoff. You see how gently the rocket takes off. We thought it might be a jerk on it, but it was just very easy.
This kid taking his video. Bye.
Yes.
You get the rocket leaving the ground?
Yes. You look like a person that was inside.
Yeah, it looks like somebody standing inside and try to pan up and down so you're seeing the whole thing. Or can you see the whole thing?
Do the ABC
I see the whole thing on
So you got a good picture of the rocket leaving the ground?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
But I need it.
Great. All right.
We could see that shining in the sky like a star for at least 30,000 feet in altitude.
And this is what it sees.
This is the TV downlink from the gondola looking up at the balloon. See how tiny the balloon envelope is. Note how tiny that is because you're going to see it.
That's the point right there. These two lines.
You're going to see it at 60,000 feet and see how expanded the balloon is. On a rocket video, you can't see anything inside the gondola because it's shooting into plastic.
That's a little bit, this is on the structure in the gondola
This is
itself.
the view from inside the gondola, inside the plastic sheathing, so you don't see anything in focus except the...
Yeah, there's some of the structure here. Some of the videos better than that from within.
I digress just a little bit. This is loading the rocket the night before, actually a couple of days before we sent it out. I just wanted to show you how everything went together. We had heaters on the tank hooked up to a lithium battery to hopefully maintain the temperature in the tank. And apparently it did work because we certainly had enough pressure to lift off. So these are the two fuel tanks and the heaters that go on the outside. This is the TV downlink, and that's all there is to it to send back the video you see. Little board color camera, little one. Well, how many minutes are we into the flight? Zach, calm down on parcel 1.
Yeah, 6:59, 6:59 by my watch. It was darn near.
So this is our telemetry downlink. It was written in Visual Basic by Ed, and had all our parameters that we were measuring during the flight. Position, our altitude, temperature. This is all the ground station here. And you see our two television downlinks recording in the background. Gondola on the left, rocket on the right. All this in the field with generators in the middle of North Carolina. This is Al Wright. His teacher said the Wright brothers were right. The brothers were right. All right, what you're going to see is the actual launch of the rocket gondola from the rocket gondola's point of view. You see the balloon come up overhead.
It's coming over.
And there they go. You saw a hand leave, and it's on its way up. This is the very first few moments of the balloon liftoff.
Also notice the sky is blue here. When you sit at altitude,
When you see this at altitude, the sky will not be blue, and you're going to see brilliant sunlight up here because the sun is much more intense up there, and the sky is black. You'll see, can't hear that.
This is at 60,000 feet. Same view, but notice the blackness of space. And look how tight the balloon is. You can see the individual seams. It's actually formed by heat sealing strips of plastic. That's how the balloon manufacturer makes it. But what we think happened is that the balloon, you see, is twisting relative to the package, twisted up the loose plastic, and that was burst. Greg thought it looked like a Pac-Man opening its mouth.
You're supposed to use some of those fishing snap swivels.
That's what we're going to use in the future, of snap swivels, only big ones,
Yeah, the big ones.
because I think that would solve the
This is
problem.
command uplink right now, so the video, so that's the first.
That was our first command. You see little bits of the balloon. It dumped the helium immediately, and that was a lot of helium. That's our second command.
Actually, we think it fired from this command during the issuance of the third uplink.
When we transmit on the uplink, it does blank the video out. So what you're going to see is just shortly after the rocket ignition, it's going to go up fast.
It's actually already ignited here. It's gone.
That's the rocket. And you see on the bottom right, Gregor pointed out, that's the rocket's on its way. I'm going to rewind that just a second and show you one more time.
How high was the balloon when the rocket launched?
About just a little under 60,000 feet, between 55 and 60,000 feet, I would estimate.
How long were you continuing to get video from the gondola?
For a good 15 minutes afterwards, just prior to, probably to the point where it fell into the ocean.
We're firing a cut down here to cut the balloon off from the gondola.
This is from the onboard rocket. You'll see the edge of the world through the plastic. That's the edge of the world. You see a slight curve even at this altitude. Now, the rocket is fading in and out because the balloon is burst and it's falling. And I suppose this is one of the first where you actually had a drop rock because we fired while the rocket was heading down. And it's going to go by real fast. There, you saw the balloon go by, little pieces of the balloon, and the sun flashes a couple of times, and then it's spinning too rapidly for our video recorder to lock onto it. It's the unfortunate thing.
You get some stuff.
Right.
And you still got some of that stuff of black fading in and out for several minutes after launch, so the transmitter was up there transmitting that.
There you have it.
Control of the that was the thing that caused trouble, was that spin rig.
Well, that's part of what we're going to work on in the upcoming flights is we're going to start working on the active controls, and then the next one we'll do some experiments to get some understanding about it. The second one probably, third one probably some roll control, and then we're looking at trying to figure out how to do a mission after that, which we go full active about a year from now.
Would some kind of swivel work to keep the balloon from spinning?
Well, the balloon will probably spin anyway, but it could isolate the spin and wrap it up. We're looking at that. Yes?
Did you have a homemade altimeter on board, or did you use something off the shelf?
We were using the GPS, and I have used altimeters, pressure sensor altimeters that are good to about 60,000 feet.
We'll probably put linear accelerometers in the next one, and a few other things as backups. The next one will probably have linear accelerometers and a few other backups to give us other bearings for altitude. I had hoped that some of the ham guys up there would have had the directional antennas that they could have picked off and we could triangulate it. None of the guys up there had that kind of equipment, so I was kind of disappointed in that. It was one of the things we were really hoping for. Another question?
I apologize for not being here, but did you show the
Can you speak
I
up?
said I apologize for not being here earlier, but did you show the flight path
Of
of the rocket?
the rocket itself or the balloon. The whole thing went out about 120 miles east of our launch site. About where were we? We were just about how far from Morehead City? Did you say, Bill?
It went about 120 miles out to sea, and about 50, 60 miles southeast of Morehead City. We were at least 60 miles from any land.
We were 60,000 feet when the balloon opened up on us. We estimate that the rocket hit between 30 and 36 nautical miles. We're still going to look at that. It depends on the timing of when it actually ignited. After the rocket started, the whole system started to drop. We got to look back at that to hone that in a little closer.
You didn't have any telemetry data on the altitude of the rocket?
Well, that's what we said. We had a GPS receiver on board, but the thing was not giving a signal at that distance, and we think it could be because the antennas were on top, they were close to the metal, and the signal was going up in the air. So that's something we're going to. It could have been a transmitter problem. But we'll be looking at this one. We did fly some experiments with the GPS system on prior to that, and we're going to try to put some redundancy in there next time again and have some dissimilar means of altitude verification.
You can see the rocket nozzle and the smoke pouring back out of it in this frame. I'm going to still frame it from this point to show you the early points of the rocket ignition.
Back here in the back.
I bought one of your t-shirts, and my hometown has a food lion. And it occurred to me it might be fun to see if I could persuade them to display the t-shirt along with a headline, something like "Food Lion Store Helps Armature Group Launch Raccoon to the Edge of Space." And I wondered if you'd have any objection, and if you didn't, if you'd have any clippings that might help me persuade them.
I don't mind that. Ronnie, you got a problem with that?
I didn't hear it.
Once y'all talk it together about that, I don't have any problem with that. That might be some fun. Although we did write them a check, but hey.
Well, they said yes, though, after saying no several times. So obviously
That they did. That was a cliffhanger. Oh, we have many funny stories associated with the program. One of them is that Tim Pickens is our rocket man, and he always says, "I hate balloons. I hate dead young balloons." That's what he says exactly, quote unquote. And he makes sure he tells Bill Brown that and me that pretty regularly. But it's a lot of fun. It turns out he launched the balloon, which really wasn't the intention. And then when he decided to take a pit stop, the rocket firing was still at least 30 minutes away, and he comes back and we're going, "Tim, we launched the rocket." He thought we were lying to him. So the rocket man launched the balloon and missed the rocket launch. So I've been teasing him, telling him we're going to make him the balloon man in the future. But it was very cold that morning when we were up there. In fact, it was a record cold morning. It was so cold that there was actually little sheets of ice on the equipment that we had left out overnight. And they'd been predicting like the day or two before it was going to be in the 80s, so I didn't even take a coat up. I just had a shirt. And we were out there in the wee hours of the morning. I was just absolutely shaking. It was cold. But some of the other funny stories are some of these balloon packages and where they've come down. Being in north part of Alabama and having the space program stuff up there, we get people from all over the country, and most of our team is from up north, guys like Bill Brown, so they find it a little bit interesting when they go to recover balloon packages up there where they film movies like Deliverance and bear stories too.
We went, one of our balloons landed in the Ocoee Wilderness.
Oh boy.
It was about 2 miles from any road and very rugged. Black bears and wild boars were running around, and I was trying to find a road into the nearest spot closest to the balloon based on the radio signal strength I was getting. And I went down this one road and I saw this house that had pit bulls running wild and a little dummy hanging from the tree, and I thought, I don't think I'm going to knock on these people's door. Not a good idea. But Greg went in and we tromped around with his machete hacking through the underbrush and got fairly close but had to turn around. And one of our members went back a few days later, Tim Pickens, and he was able to locate the balloon. And when he got out to the store, the guy opened up a photo album. He says, "I didn't want to scare you all, but this is where we hunt back there. And there are 400-pound black bears and wild boars." And he said, "I want to go back there without a weapon." And Greg said, "Well, my machete wouldn't have done too much." He said, "That just would have got mad."
Any other questions?
Generally, they aren't that difficult to find.
Yeah, that was the most challenging package retrieval we had.
That one took us 10 days.
10 days. So, any other questions?
Is that an off-the-shelf radio transmitter I saw?
It's an amateur, and we bought components off the shelf and built it up ourselves.
The rocket TV transmitter was a homemade transmitter. That was a design that's a prototype. The gondola transmitter is a commercial off the shelf for amateur radio and television.
How big do you think you can make your design of your engine? In other words, evolving that engine design, how big?
Well, right now, the biggest balloon that you can get, you can hang a rocket off the hook that would be about 16,500 pounds. This is a 40-pound vehicle. So that gives you an idea. We're going to keep building bigger, better, and get more performance out of it. That's our goal.
and by the way, those of you that want to join our chapter, there might be a slight advantage to you that in one of our next rocket flights where we will have a payload capacity, we plan to replicate a mission that we did in that first balloon flight, in which we fly chapter membership cards with certifications on the back of the altitude we reached. So this might be a nice little keepsake to have. This one I've carried since we flew that balloon on July the 31st in 1994 to 115,000 feet. So that's just an added little advantage.
How high the next one?
Well, the next rocket should hit about 60 to 70 miles with a payload. About the same altitude that this one would have hit, but it'll carry a lot more payload. We'll have more experimentation on it, and hopefully our reliability factors will be a lot higher on the balloon. And also the downlink electronics. So we've got a lot. We learned a lot from this. We learned a lot without spending tons of money. We got mission off. We learned about the environment, operating in that environment. You can't just hang a rocket on a balloon and think it's going to fire. It won't work. It just won't work. You can't get them to burn. You can't get them to ignite. You know, you go through the cold soap region. I lived in Alaska for 2 years. I'll tell you what, vinyl at these temperatures, if you sit down on the bottom of the seat, you can expect it to shatter like glass. I mean, everything is different. What we consider common sense here at 14.7 psi at 70 degrees Fahrenheit don't apply in a vacuum at those temperature regimes. In the back.
Yeah, I got in somewhat late. Did you go over the reasons you chose that particular fuel oxidizer combination?
Easy to work with. I mean, it's safe, it's easy to work with, it's cheap, and it gives us good performance.
How do you get the voids out of the asphalt so it wouldn't shock them?
Well, asphalt is pretty nice. Given the density and properties of it, it can make voids, but we shake it to help keep it from having voids in it. It's a lot nicer in that respect than hydroxyl terminated polybutylamine, the normal rubber fuels that you store, P-bands, that you get in solid rockets. That's one of the advantages of asphalt, in fact. And also not being non-explosive, you don't get the destructive failure modes in these rockets that you'll see in other vehicles. Anybody else? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. Ronald Joy's back there taking chapter memberships, donations, and selling t-shirts. And we're going to hit space next time, guys.
Are you planning to see it in for a little